Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at a bit of a head-scratcher
Yeah.
in the steel industry. Cleveland-Cliffs, ticker symbol CLF.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting case.
Yeah.
CLF stock is up today 2.37%, closing at $9.95.
Okay.
But over the past 6 months, it's taken a pretty big hit, 33.6%.
Wow, that's a lot worse than the industry overall, right?
Right.
Which is down about 7.2%
Yeah.
in the same period.
Yeah.
So what's the story here?
Well, I think to understand Cleveland-Cliffs, you really have to look at the bigger picture. You know, the steel industry as a whole is facing some serious challenges right now. Reduced demand, oversupply, and falling steel prices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These headwinds make it a really tough environment for any company.
Yeah.
And Cleveland-Cliffs is no exception.
Right, and we see those industry challenges reflected in their recent performance.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Their Q3 2024 earnings report showed a loss of 33 cents per share, which was actually a little worse than the 31-cent loss that analysts had predicted.
Oh, wow.
Even more concerning is the year-over-year revenue decline. It's down 18.5%.
Oof, those are some tough numbers.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like the short-term outlook is very rosy.
Right.
But let's say you're an investor.
Yeah.
You're trying to decide what to do with Cleveland-Cliffs. Are there any signs of potential? Anything that might suggest a turnaround?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, analyst opinions are kind of all over the map on this one.
Right.
With target prices ranging from $8 all the way up to $21.
Really?
That kind of discrepancy tells us there's just a lot of uncertainty
Right.
and a wide range of opinions about where this company is headed.
That's a huge spread.
It is.
So how can investors even try to make sense of these mixed signals?
Yeah.
What about technical analysis? Does that give us any clues?
Well, the technical indicators paint a rather mixed picture, too.
Okay.
On the one hand, we see some classic bearish signs. You know, Cleveland-Cliffs has been trading below both its 50-day and 200-day moving averages. Back in June 2024, we even saw a death cross.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Which is when the 50-day moving average drops below the 200-day moving average.
Okay.
It's a sign that often foreshadows a continued downtrend.
Okay, so the technicals are giving us some warning signals.
Right.
But you mentioned mixed signals. So are there any indicators suggesting that things might not be entirely hopeless?
Yeah, there are a few glimmers of hope.
Okay.
For example, the Williams percent R
Okay.
is potentially oversold right now, which could indicate that the stock is due for a rebound.
Okay.
Also, the price rate of change,
Okay.
or ROC, is positive.
Gotcha. So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, it's not all doom and gloom.
I was going to ask about trading volume as well. Is that telling us anything useful?
Well, on January 23rd, Cleveland-Cliffs saw a trading volume of about 10,198,767 shares.
Wow. Okay.
That's lower than its average volume of about 14,895,330 shares.
So lighter volume than usual.
Ex.
How should we interpret that?
I think lower trading volume can suggest that investors are proceeding with caution. They might be waiting for more certainty about Cleveland-Cliffs' future before jumping in.
That's understandable given all the uncertainty we've already talked about. Is there anything else we should factor in before we start to think about potential investment strategies?
Well, there is one more wild card.
Okay.
The impact of former President Trump's trade policies.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, the steel import tariffs.
Yes. The tariffs? Those are pretty controversial.
Oh, they were.
When they first went into effect.
Absolutely. And they continue to be a major factor in the steel industry.
Okay.
The original intent was to protect domestic steel producers, like Cleveland-Cliffs, by making foreign steel more expensive.
Right.
The idea was that if demand for steel were to rebound, these tariffs would give domestic companies more pricing power.
That makes sense in theory.
Right.
But how has it played out in reality?
That's where things get complicated.
Okay.
The tariffs created a lot of uncertainty and geopolitical tension. And with changing administrations and evolving trade policies, investors are understandably wary.
Right.
They aren't sure what the future holds for these tariffs or how they will ultimately impact the competitive landscape for U.S. steel producers.
It sounds like kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
The tariffs offer some protection, but they also inject a lot of uncertainty.
Exactly. It makes it even harder to predict what the future holds for companies like Cleveland-Cliffs.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. The current state of the steel industry, Cleveland-Cliffs, recent performance, those mixed signals from the technical analysis, and the ongoing impact of the tariffs. What I'm hearing is that it's a complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
It certainly is, and that's why it's crucial to stay informed.
Okay.
To really dig into the details and understand the forces at play.
Okay, so with all that said, let's shift gears and talk about potential investment strategies.
Okay.
Given all these factors, what are some options our listeners could consider when it comes to Cleveland-Cliffs?
I think a good place to start is by looking at what the analysts are saying.
Okay.
Remember that wide range of target prices we discussed?
Yeah.
That really reflects the uncertainty surrounding Cleveland-Cliffs. The general consensus right now is a hold rating, meaning most analysts aren't strongly recommending to buy or sell at this time.
So they're kind of sitting on the fence.
Yeah, pretty much.
Waiting to see how things play out. Are there any really strong opinions out there either way?
There is one outlier worth mentioning, J Research.
Okay.
They recently upgraded Cleveland-Cliffs from a sell to a buy rating.
Wow.
And set a target price of $14.27.
That's a big jump from sell to buy.
It is.
What's behind a move like that?
Well, they haven't fully disclosed their analysis.
Okay.
But it seems they believe Cleveland-Cliffs has the potential to outperform expectations.
Interesting.
Despite the current headwinds.
Okay.
This upgrade might be a sign that some experts see value in the company that the market is overlooking.
So that's something to keep an eye on.
Definitely.
See if other analysts follow suit.
Right.
And revise their ratings.
Exactly.
In the coming weeks.
So we've got mixed opinions from the analysts.
Yep.
What other factors are at play here?
Well, there's a legal situation that investors should be aware of.
Oh, okay.
Cleveland-Cliffs has been involved in a pretty public confrontation with U.S. Steel. Okay, now this sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a complex situation.
Okay.
But essentially, Cleveland-Cliffs is accusing U.S. Steel of unfair competition and intellectual property theft. These kinds of legal battles can be costly and time-consuming.
Yeah, for sure.
And they definitely add to the uncertainty surrounding Cleveland-Cliffs.
Yeah, legal battles are never really a good sign.
No, they're not.
But how might this impact an investment decision?
Well, on the one hand, a negative outcome in this case could drag Cleveland-Cliffs down even further.
Right.
But on the other hand, if they win, it could actually strengthen their competitive position.
So it's a risk, but there's potential for a reward.
Exactly. It's just one more piece of the puzzle investors need to consider.
So we've got these mixed signals from analysts. We've got this legal battle.
Right.
And of course, we have the ongoing challenges in the steel industry.
Yep.
How can investors make sense of all this and decide what to do?
That's the million-dollar question. Let's revisit those potential investment strategies we outlined earlier and consider them in light of this new information.
Okay, sounds good. What's the first one?
The first strategy is what we call the hold strategy.
Okay.
This approach makes sense for investors who already own Cleveland-Cliffs stock and believe in the company's long-term potential.
They're willing to ride it out.
They are.
Right.
They're willing to kind of ride out the current storm in hopes of a recovery down the road.
Okay, so whole node means you're optimistic about the long term.
Yeah.
But, there might be some bumps in the road.
Exactly.
Okay, what about investors who are thinking about buying Cleveland-Cliffs stock for the first time?
Well, for them, I'd probably recommend a more cautious approach.
Okay.
Wait for clearer signs of a turnaround. Perhaps look for a better entry point based on technical analysis.
Okay.
Or some positive changes in market conditions.
So be patient and look for some confirmation that things are headed in the right direction
Exactly.
before jumping in.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What's our third option?
The third option is to really pay close attention to Cleveland-Cliffs' upcoming earnings announcements.
Okay.
Particularly the one scheduled for February 25th, 2025.
Okay.
This could be a make or break moment.
Right.
Those earnings numbers will tell us a lot about whether the company is actually turning things around or not.
So February 25th.
Circle that on the calendar.
Circled on the calendar.
Yeah.
Good to know. But with all this information, some investors might be feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
How can they actually use it to make a decision?
Well, it really all comes down to individual risk tolerance.
Right.
And investment goals.
Yeah.
Some investors might be very comfortable with a higher level of risk and see Cleveland-Cliffs as a potential bargain.
Yeah.
Others might prefer to play it safe and wait for more certainty. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Right. It's all about finding investments that align with your individual circumstances.
Exactly. Investing in individual stocks always carries a certain level of risk,
Yeah.
especially in a volatile sector like steel.
Yeah.
So, do your research, consider your own financial goals and your comfort level with risk, and make the choice that feels right for you.
Great advice. Now, before we wrap up, you mentioned some technical indicators that can provide valuable insight into potential price movements.
Absolutely.
Can we maybe dive into those a little bit?
Sure. Let's explore some key technical indicators like the MACD, the RSI, and the Williams %R, and discuss how they might apply to Cleveland-Cliffs.
All right, so we've talked about the fundamentals. We've looked at what the analysts are saying.
Right.
But what can the charts actually tell us about Cleveland-Cliffs? For listeners who like to dig into technical analysis, what are some key things to watch?
Well, technical analysis can definitely provide some additional insights. Let's start with one of the most popular momentum indicators. The moving average convergence divergence. Or MACD.
I've heard of the MCD, but I'll admit, it always sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, a lot of people feel that way.
Can you break it down for us?
Sure. So essentially, the MACD looks at the relationship between two moving averages. Typically, the 12-day and 26-day exponential moving averages. And it helps us see if the short-term momentum is stronger or weaker than the long-term trend.
So if the short-term average is higher than the long-term average, that's a bullish signal, right?
Exactly. A positive MACD suggests upward momentum. However, right now, Cleveland-Cliffs actually has a negative MACD, which means the short-term average is below the long-term average. This points to a bearish trend.
So not a great sign at the moment.
Right. Not ideal.
But something to watch closely.
Absolutely.
For a potential shift.
Exactly.
What about the relative strength index?
Yeah.
Or RSI?
The RSI, everyone loves the RSI.
What does that tell us?
So the RSI is another momentum indicator. But it focuses on the speed and magnitude of recent price changes. It's measured on a scale of 0 to 100. With readings above 70 generally considered overbought. And readings below 30 considered oversold.
So where does Cleveland-Cliffs fall on that scale?
Currently, Cleveland-Cliffs has an RSI of 43.06. Which puts it kind of in that neutral to slightly bearish zone. It's not screaming buy right now. But it's also not flashing major warning signs yet.
So we're looking for movement above 70 or below 30.
Yeah, those are the key thresholds.
To get a stronger signal.
Right.
What about that last indicator you mentioned, the Williams %R?
Yes, the Williams %R.
What's that one all about?
Well, it's similar to the RSI.
Okay.
But it looks at a shorter time period,
Okay.
usually 14 days.
Gotcha.
It measures where the closing price sits
Okay.
within the recent high-low range.
Okay.
For Cleveland-Cliffs, the Williams %R is hovering around negative 40.52, which suggests it's getting pretty close to that oversold territory.
So that might be a sign that a bounce back could be on the horizon.
It's possible.
Okay.
But again, it's just one indicator.
Right.
We always need to look at the bigger picture.
For sure.
And consider all the factors we've discussed.
Right. Technical analysis is a tool, not a crystal ball.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It can give us some clues, but we shouldn't rely on it exclusively.
No, absolutely not.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I think so too.
Cleveland-Cliffs is definitely a company facing some serious challenges.
Yes.
But they're also, these little glimmers of hope.
Right.
And there's still plenty of uncertainty.
Lots of uncertainty.
Which always makes things interesting.
That's what keeps things exciting.
In the investing world.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a complex situation.
It is.
But I think we've shown that there's a lot of valuable information available.
Yeah.
To help investors make informed decisions.
Absolutely. That's what we aim for here on Investing Talk Podcast.
Exactly.
To equip you with the knowledge you need to navigate the markets and make smart choices for your portfolio.
Well said. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for this look at Cleveland-Cliffs.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe.
Yes, please subscribe.
Share it with your friends and leave us a comment letting us know what you think about CLF.
We love hearing from you.
Until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing.